In the several years of continuity, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has remained true to its comic book roots by weaving outlandish story elements into its real-world setting. With everything that's already happened, it's amazing to think what ended up getting left on the cutting room floor. Over the years, filmmakers have spoken up about what was originally planned, what could have been, and who almost made it to the screen. Before we get started on these changes that could have been, make sure you fly on over to that subscribe button and join our notification squad to keep up to date with the latest videos.
More powerful, more beautiful, more capable of destroying the Guardians of the Galaxy. I think I shall call him Adam.
Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and Adam Warlock. Guardians of the Galaxy was a smash hit, so when it came to the sequel, we couldn't wait to find out what shenanigans the Guardians got into and what new characters were to be introduced. When focusing on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, James Gunn stated that he wanted to introduce both Mantis and Adam Warlock into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Not a bad plan, right?
That is not a plan!
It's barely a concept.
You're taking their side?
I am Groot.
Well, as we know, things moved ahead with Mantis, but when it came to Warlock, Gunn felt the film had become far too busy with too many characters, so he was cut. Much to our dismay, of course, but it ended up working out in the end, don't you think? The director did say that he was particularly happy with what they planned to do with the character, and believes that there's a chance he could appear in the next film. We definitely hope so. Gunn has taken on the role of architect for the MCU's cosmic side, so if there's anyone who knows about the future of Adam Warlock, it's gonna be him.
Who are you? Adam Warlock, defender of Karadez.
Let's also not forget the post-credits stinger. We think it's likely only the beginning for this artificially created being.
You're looking right at him. It was always me, Tony. Right from the start.
I am the Mandarin!
The Mandarin was real. Let's step back and recall the third Iron Man film. Do you remember the villain in the beginning of the film? The Mandarin. Well, it turns out that the Mandarin, the real one, was initially considered as the villain for the first Iron Man film. Believe it or not, Jeff Bridges was actually cast to be the villain before the writers even knew what bad guy he'd be playing.
Should have pressed the panic button.
Well, I panicked, but then I handled it.
Director Jon Favreau and Mark Miller eventually decided that the Mandarin and his rings were too fantastical for the story that they were trying to tell, but they left in elements that would allow the character to be introduced in a sequel. But these plans never came to fruition after Favreau left the franchise before Iron Man 3. While the writing team picked up the Mandarin elements, they ultimately decided to turn the character into a fake during a writing session. It ended up being the kind of decision that no one saw coming, and also that no one really liked. What did you think? Did you like the Mandarin in the film?
OMG! Captain Marvel! It's you!
Yeah, Ms. Marvel. I've heard good things. I like the name.
Carol Danvers was in Jessica Jones. Did you know that back in 2010, Melissa Rosenberg was developing aka Jessica Jones as an ABC series before landing it at Netflix? Crazy, right? Get this, as part of her original idea for the series, Jessica's best friend would actually have been Carol Danvers, like in the comic book. However, in the time it took the show to come together, things changed. Miss Marvel was upgraded to Captain Marvel in the comics, and Marvel planned on giving her a role in the movie side of the MCU. So this made it difficult for Captain Marvel to be included in a television series. What do you do in that scenario?
It's been a long week.
Well, Rosenberg gave Trish Walker the role Danvers would have filled, but with some alterations to the story, of course. One of them being having no superpowers. Rosenberg now feels like the changes were for the best because the relationship between Jessica and a non-powered Trish offers something Carol wouldn't have allowed for. We think Trish totally humanizes Jessica and grounds her. Would you still rather have seen Captain Marvel?
Now the world belongs to Nightmare.
If I am dreaming, this would be an awesome time to wake up.
Doctor Strange's villain was Nightmare. The plot of Doctor Strange could have been a whole lot different if Marvel went with Scott Derrickson's initial idea. The film's writer and director wanted to use Nightmare as the villain and introduce the concept of the dream dimension. In the end, Marvel felt that it would have overly complicated the movie. We don't think so, do you? Sure, the film was very visually stimulating, but the concepts were fairly easy to grasp. But alas, in order to simplify the film and still maintain most of the plot, the villain Dormammu was chosen to take the place of Nightmare. And so we've had the phrase,
Dormammu,
I've come to bargain.
Stuck in our head for weeks after watching the film, Kevin Feige has discussed this decision, revealing that with all the things they were asking the audience to believe, the dream dimension might have been one too many concepts at play. We disagree. We're big kids and we could have handled it. But Marvel may have ultimately been right.
So you want to tell me why you were at Stark's mansion last night?
I'm trying to fix this thing. I didn't know you and the Master were gonna blow the place up.
Oh, I see. So you were trying to save Stark when he threatened us.
I've told you, Killian, we can use him.
Maya Hansen was the villain in Iron Man 3. Aside from the not-so-villainous fake villain the Mandarin, in Iron Man 3 we also had Aldrich Killian. But if we backtrack, the story was sort of set up for someone else to be the evil genius behind it all. Maya Hansen, the scientist in Iron Man 3 who helped create the Extremis virus, was actually the one who was intended to be the mastermind behind the events in the film. Writer Shane Black's intention was to put the focus on Aldrich Killian, only for it to turn out that Hansen was actually the one pulling the strings the whole time. Until, of course, she gets taken out by Killian. It would make more sense since it was her research that led to it. These plans existed in the early phases of the script before Marvel Entertainment's executives became worried that a female villain would hurt toy sales. In order to alleviate these concerns, the creative team was forced to alter the script to make Killian the mastermind instead of Hansen. This in turn reduced the role of Rebecca Hall and other female characters in the final film. What a bummer.
You've been asleep, Cap, for almost 70 years. You gonna be okay?
Yeah, I had a date.
Cap travels to the present sooner. One of the really awesome things about Captain America was that the first film felt like a period piece, as it was set in World War II. It combined the war film with the comic book world, and it did so brilliantly. But did you know that it was initially Marvel's intention to create a Captain America movie that was set in World War II for only half the film? We would have only seen Steve Rogers fighting Nazis in the 40s, only for him to become frozen midway through so that the second half of the film would be set in modern day. Producer Avi Arad felt that Cap's man-at-a-time concept was his strength. It would have been difficult to have a movie set in two different time periods, and if that transition wasn't handled correctly, the film would have felt very disjointed. In the end, of course, the entire film was set during World War II. We're so thankful they chose to dedicate an entire film to one time period. It makes his transition into modern age that much more impactful, don't you think?
I don't know where you're getting your information, but he wasn't my biggest fan.
What do you remember about your dad, huh?
He was cold. He was calculating. He never told me he loved me. He never even told me he liked me.
Howard Stark was alive and evil. Now here's a bit of a curveball for all you Iron Man fans. Before the Marvel Cinematic Universe came into focus, New Line Cinema had the rights to make an Iron Man movie. Fun fact, the movie had Tony Stark going up against his very alive father, Howard Stark.
Okay, what?
Don't look at me. You said it.
Towards the end of the film, his father would become a villainous war machine. Talk about serious daddy issues. But how cool would that have been? Genius against genius. While we know that the project eventually fell apart and the rights to the film were handed back to Marvel, it's more than possible that some of these story elements were saved for 2008's Iron Man. How, you may ask? Well, the role of Howard Stark was eventually filled by Obadiah Stane, and instead of becoming War Machine, he wore the Ironmonger armor. Not too far off, but do you think that the outcome would have been the same if Howard Stark was in the suit instead?
You super spies making a point to sneak up on hardworking heroes?
Kid.
We gotta talk.
Nick Fury was Spider-Man's mentor. Spider-Man Homecoming proved to be much more than just a Spider-Man movie in the end. Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, connected the film to the greater Marvel Cinematic Universe, but many felt that his presence distracted the movie from focusing solely on Peter Parker, which is a fair assessment, but considering that we've had quite a few Spidey films now, we're okay letting that slide. Plus, aren't you as excited as we are to see Spidey join the Avengers? It also turns out that things could have been much different if director John Watts was allowed to move forward with his original pitch for the film. John Watts presented the idea of having Nick Fury act as Peter Parker's mentor instead of Iron Man. An interesting proposition since Fury hadn't been seen in a while, so naturally, the director wanted to bring him back in. They were clearly impressed because he got the job, but it turns out that Samuel L. Jackson's role was later given to Robert Downey Jr. instead. And now we have the Iron Man and Spider-Man mentorship we saw in theaters.
Thor, you gotta try and bottleneck that portal. Slow him down. You got the lightning. Light the bastards up.
Thor's multiversal lightning. Thor is one of the most underrated superheroes in the MCU. He's way more powerful than we've seen him portrayed on screen. He has so many awesome powers provided by wielding Mjolnir, but they are definitely underused. So if you felt like the climactic battle between Thor and Malekith in Thor: The Dark World ended up feeling a little underwhelming, you're totally not alone. On the film's DVD commentary, it was explained that the original ending to the final battle had Thor summoning lightning from all 9 realms to finally destroy Malekith. Now that sounds more like it. Thor is mighty after all. Where was the mighty and epic ending? Well, it was because this ending didn't allow Jane, Eric, and Darcy to play much of a part. So the final battle was changed and the gravity spike element was added in to give everyone something to do. Let it be known how much cooler things would have been if all these other actors weren't involved.
Captain America fought valiantly until his arm was slammed through the table by Captain Marvel.
Hey guys, good to see you all happy, healthy, and not exploded.
Captain Marvel in Age of Ultron. The first Avengers film was an epic culmination of the MCU at that point, and in terms of action and spectacle, it didn't disappoint. So how would Marvel top themselves on the next Avengers film? Well, make it even more awesome, of course. More action and new characters. Early drafts for Avengers Age of Ultron had Captain Marvel being introduced into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now that would have been awesome, don't you think? But as you've seen in the final product, she was not included. The decision not to include Carol Danvers in the film came down to Marvel Studios not wanting to introduce the character without properly setting her up, establishing her origin, and giving the audience a sense of who she was. That makes sense. We can dig that. As Kevin Feige stated, they didn't believe it was the right time to bring her in. Director Joss Whedon went so far as to film visual effects plates of Captain Marvel flying into Avengers Tower before the idea was nixed. These shots were eventually used with Scarlet Witch instead. Marvel then began plans for a Captain Marvel solo film, which is starring Brie Larson. We can't wait to see Captain Marvel on the big screen.
Move over, Tree. Let a real pilot take over.
These are sensitive controls. Ain't like any idiot can fly this thing.
Quill can.
Well, there you have it, folks. Those were some movie plots that would have changed everything. Did any of them make any more sense than what made it into the movie? Which ones did you like? Are there any that we may have missed? Let us know in the comments below. If you like this video, be sure to share it with friends. And while you're here, don't forget to check out more awesome videos like this one on our playlist. As always, thanks for watching.